The invitation. The sky above New York City was calm, blue and clear. People walked on the streets, cars moved fast, and no one expected anything strange to happen. Then it came, a loud sound like thunder echoed across the sky. People looked up and gasped. A silver spaceship, smooth and shining, slowly landed in the middle of Central Park. It made no sound now. It just sat there, silent and mysterious. Everyone ran. Police came. News reporters shouted into cameras, but no one went near the ship. Then a door opened. A tall alien stepped out. He had green skin, long arms, and silver eyes. He wore a black robe with golden lines. In his hand, he held a glowing scroll. He looked around. People watched from a distance, hiding behind trees and walls. The alien spoke in perfect English. "I'm Ambassador Drell of Zarion 5. I bring an invitation for a human named Ethan Cross." The crowd was confused. Who was Ethan Cross? Miles away in a small apartment, a young man named Ethan sat on his couch fixing a broken robot dog. He worked as a space mechanic. He wasn't famous. He wasn't rich. He lived alone and liked quiet things. Suddenly his screen blinked. A message popped up. "You are requested at the royal wedding of Princess Lyra of Zarion 5. Please prepare for transport." Ethan stared at the screen. "Is this a joke?" he whispered. Before he could answer, a bright blue light filled the room. In 1 second, Ethan was gone. Ethan woke up inside a strange, glowing room. Soft music played. The floor felt like glass, but it was warm. A robot voice spoke. "Welcome, guest of honor. We will arrive at Zarion 5 in 3 hours." Ethan sat up. "Guest of honor? Me? Why?" He looked out of the window. Stars flew past like rain. He was on a space cruiser, flying, faster than light. He found a small room with clothes. Strange robes and suits hung neatly. A tray of food waited. He didn't feel hungry. He felt confused and scared. "Why me?" he asked again. 3 hours later, the ship landed on a floating platform above a golden city. Tall towers, glowing. Bridges and flying ships filled the sky. Ethan stepped out and gasped. The air smelled like flowers. The sky was violet. Alien creatures of every shape and color moved around. A tall guard with crystal armor walked to him. "You are the chosen guest," he said. "Follow me." Ethan followed the guard into a large hall. Bright lights, music, and laughter filled the space. This was the royal wedding. The hall was round and filled with guests from many worlds. All eyes turned toward Ethan. Some smiled, some looked shocked, others whispered quietly. The king sat on a tall throne. His skin was silver and his crown sparkled like a star. Next to him stood Princess Lyra. She was tall and beautiful with glowing hair and soft eyes. But when she saw Ethan, her smile faded for a moment. Then she quickly looked away. Ethan bowed, awkwardly. Hi?" The king laughed. "Welcome, Ethan Cross. Your presence honors us." Ethan tried to speak, but nothing made sense. Why was he here? Why did everyone stare at him? A soft voice whispered behind him. It was the princess. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "This wasn't supposed to happen." Ethan turned. "What do you mean?" She looked at him with worried eyes. "There's more going on than, you need to be careful." Before he could ask more, the king stood up. "Let the wedding games begin," he shouted. The room cheered. Music grew louder. Dancers flew into the air. Lights changed colors. Food appeared on floating tables. But Ethan didn't move. He looked at the princess again. She walked away slowly. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Then the guard leaned close to Ethan's ear and said in a low voice, "You are not just a guest. You are the key." "The key to what?" Ethan asked. The guard didn't answer. He just smiled. The royal secret Ethan Cross couldn't sleep. He sat in a soft silver bed inside, the guest chamber of Zarion 5's royal palace. The walls slowly changed colors like a living dream. Alien birds sang outside the floating balcony. But Ethan didn't notice any of it. His mind raced with questions. Why was he invited to a royal alien wedding? Why had the princess warned him to be careful? Why had the guard whispered, "You are the key"? He had no answers, only a feeling that something dark was hiding behind all the beauty. Just then, the door slid open with a soft hiss. A small, spider-like robot entered, holding a folded robe. "Where?" "This," it said. "You are expected at the morning ceremony." Ethan sighed and stood up. "More ceremonies?" He muttered. "I didn't even want to come here." He put on the robe, deep blue with silver stars, and followed the robot down long, glowing halls. Guards stood like statues. Alien nobles whispered as he passed by. Some bowed, others looked afraid. What did they see when they looked at him? The morning ceremony was held in the Hall of Ancients, a huge dome with a glass ceiling that showed the sky. There, a group of priests chanted in a forgotten language. A fire burned in the center. Smoke twisted into shapes, dragons, stars, and ancient faces. The king stood beside the fire. Princess Lyra stood behind him, her face pale and distant. "This is the ritual of truth," the king said. "It will show your heart." Before Ethan could ask what that meant, 2 guards grabbed his arms and pushed him toward the fire. "Wait, what is this?" he shouted. The king raised a hand. "Fear not. If your soul is pure, the fire will accept you." The smoke circled Ethan's body. He felt cold, then hot, then something strange, like a voice inside his head whispering his deepest fears. "You are not enough. You don't belong. You will destroy us all." Suddenly, the fire exploded upward. The smoke turned black. The priests gasped. The fire had turned into the shape of a human, a tall shadow with glowing eyes. The room went silent. The king stepped back. The princess looked terrified. "The prophecy," one priest whispered. "What prophecy?" Ethan demanded. "The king turned to him, his voice low. "The one that says an outsider will arrive during the union of stars, and he will bring either salvation or destruction." Ethan shook his head. "You think that's me?" The princess walked forward quickly. "Father, this is madness. He doesn't even know why he's here." The king nodded slowly. "Perhaps. But the fire does not lie." Later that day, Ethan found himself alone in the palace garden. It floated high above the city, surrounded by glass domes and soft glowing plants. He sat on a bench trying to breathe. That's when Princess Lyra appeared beside him. "You shouldn't be here," she said again. "I didn't exactly buy a ticket," Ethan replied. "Your people brought me." She looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then she whispered, "I sent the invitation." Ethan turned to her, shocked. "You what?" Lyra nodded. "I hacked into the royal system. I sent your name to the ambassador. I chose you." "But why?" She leaned closer. "Because you're part of the prophecy. But not the way my father thinks." She pulled out a glowing crystal from her sleeve. It hummed with power. Inside it, Ethan saw something himself standing in the middle of a battlefield, holding a sword made of light armies behind him. "This is from the Star Temple," she said. "It's a vision of the future." "I don't want to be in a prophecy," Ethan said. "I fix broken robots. I'm not a hero." "That's why you were chosen," she said quietly. "Heroes don't chase power. They're forced to rise when no one else can." Before Ethan could respond, a loud alarm echoed through the sky. "Warning, breach in the outer wall. Unknown forces approaching." Guards ran past them. Ships rose into the sky. Then Ethan saw it, a shadow in the clouds. A massive warship, dark and silent, moving toward the palace like a monster. The princess turned pale. "It's him." "Who?" Ethan asked. "General Varnak," she whispered. "My father's advisor, the real enemy. He wants to control the throne. And he'll use you to do it." Ethan stood up. "Why me?" "Because if you marry me, he gets the power of the bloodline. The marriage binds the empire to the one who holds the key." Ethan shook his head. "I don't want any of this." Lyra looked into his eyes. Then help me stop it. Far above them, the warship opened its weapons. Lights began to glow. Something terrible was about to begin. And in that moment, Ethan Cross understood. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a trap, and he had just stepped right into it. The trial of fire. Ethan Cross stood at the edge of a stone platform, staring down into a deep pit filled with red smoke and strange sounds. The platform was floating above the city, hidden behind the palace towers, guarded by statues that blinked when no one looked. "What is this place?" Ethan asked, his voice dry. Princess Lyra stood beside him, tense. "This is the proving ground, the trial of fire." Ethan frowned. "Sounds dramatic." Lyra didn't smile. "Because it is. If you pass, the court accepts your right to stand beside the royal bloodline. If you fail..." She paused. "You disappear." Before he could speak, heavy footsteps echoed behind them. General Varnak had arrived. He was tall, with skin like iron and eyes like frozen glass. He wore a black cloak with silver symbols stitched into it, symbols of war, conquest, and power. "The outsider wants to marry the princess," Varnak said coldly. "Then let the flames judge him." "I don't want to marry anyone," Ethan snapped. "I didn't come here for this." Varnak smiled slowly. "The fire doesn't care what you want." With a wave of his hand, the floor under Ethan's feet glowed. The stone opened like a flower, and Ethan dropped into the pit. Ethan hit the ground hard. Dust rose around him. He stood up, coughing, and looked around. He was inside a huge underground chamber. The walls were covered in carvings, creatures with wings, warriors holding swords made of light, and a strange symbol that kept repeating. A circle with a burning eye in the center. Torches lit one by one as he stepped forward. A deep voice echoed through the chamber. "You who do not belong, it must prove your spirit is strong." The ground shifted. A path of burning stone stretched ahead, floating above lava. Shapes moved in the shadows. Something was alive down here. Ethan took a deep breath. Okay, one step at a time. The first trial came fast. Stone doors opened and a creature leapt out. It had 6 legs, sharp teeth, and glowing red skin. It roared and charged. Ethan had no weapons, but he saw something, a metal rod stuck in the wall. He grabbed it, rolled aside just as the beast struck, and jabbed it into the monster's chest. Sparks flew. The creature collapsed, but it wasn't dead. It melted into fire and reformed behind him. Ethan ran. He jumped over fire pits, slid under stone blades, climbed walls that shook under his hands. The trial was not just strength, it was speed, thought, instinct, and memory. Halfway through the trial, Ethan entered a circular room. The fire died down. In the center stood a mirror. No, not a mirror. It was a memory gate. Smoke filled the glass, and slowly a scene appeared. Earth, his old workshop, his brother Max laughing while Ethan tried to fix a broken robot. "You always try to fix things, Ethan," Max had said. "But sometimes, you can't." Ethan blinked. The image vanished. Now Max was screaming. Fire, blood, a ship crash. Ethan fell to his knees. "Stop, please." The voice returned. "You carry pain. Do you hide from it or face it?" Ethan stood up, fists clenched. "I live with it." The room exploded, in light. Now came the final test. A bridge of flame led to a floating island of black stone. At the center was a sword. It floated in midair, surrounded by light. Ethan walked slowly toward it. As he reached out, the sword spoke. "You are not from here. Your blood is not royal. Why do you deserve this fire?" Ethan answered quietly. "Because someone has to stand up when no one else will." The sword burned bright, then flew into his hand. It felt alive. Suddenly, the entire trial chamber shook. The walls split open. Dozens of stone warriors rose from the lava. Their eyes glowed. They moved toward Ethan, but the sword burned in his hand, and with a roar it sent a wave of pure energy across the ground. The warriors froze, then bowed. The path opened. He had passed. Back on the surface, the court watched as Ethan rose from the pit, his clothes torn, his face covered in dust, but the glowing sword still in his hand. The crowd fell silent. Princess Lyra smiled for the first time. "You did it." General Varnak stared, his jaw tight. "He is not of our kind," Varnak said. "This is dangerous." "No," the king said. "This is destiny." But Ethan wasn't listening, because in the crowd, he saw something strange. Cloaked figure was watching him, someone who didn't belong there. When their eyes met, the figure turned and vanished into the shadows, and as the crowd cheered, a cold wind blew through the city. The trial was over. But the real danger had just begun. The enemy within. The sword still glowed in Ethan's hand as he left the trial of fire. His steps were heavy, his body aching, but the weight inside his chest was heavier. He had passed. He had survived fire, monsters, illusions, and even his own memories. But something else had entered him down there, something ancient, something waiting. Now, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. That night in the palace courtyard, a celebration filled the air. Floating lights danced above the trees, music from crystal harps echoed across the domes, and alien guests raised their glasses to the human champion. Ethan stood alone on a balcony staring out at the stars. Behind him, Princess Lyra walked up quietly. "You're the first outsider to survive the trial in over 500 years, she said. "Great," Ethan muttered. "Do I get a trophy?" Lyra smiled faintly, but her eyes stayed serious. "You're not safe here." Ethan turned. "I just passed a death maze. How much worse can it get?" "General Varnak," she whispered. "He's planning something. He wanted you to fail. Now he'll try something else." "Like what?" Ethan asked. She looked away. "Like using you. Or destroying you." Later that night, Ethan followed his instincts and his curiosity into the darker part of the palace. The music faded behind him as he stepped into a quiet hallway. The floor changed from gold to black stone. Guards were fewer, cameras blinked and turned the other way, and then he saw the cloaked figure again, the same one from earlier. This time Ethan followed. Through a narrow tunnel, past statues of forgotten kings, until finally he reached an old storage chamber deep beneath the palace. Inside, the cloaked figure stood by a flickering wall screen, scanning data quickly. Ethan stepped forward. "Who are you?" The figure turned, pulling down his hood. He was human, older, bearded with scars across his face, but definitely human. "You're not supposed to be here," the man said. "Neither are you," Ethan replied. The man stared at him. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what?" The man walked over and placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Your mother wasn't from Earth." Ethan froze. "What?" "She was from Zarian," the man continued. "Part of the royal bloodline hidden away during the Civil War. She escaped to Earth. And you are the last true heir." Ethan stepped back, confused. "That's not possible. Search your memories, your dreams. The fire didn't choose you by accident." The man tapped the wall screen. A hologram appeared, of Ethan as a baby, held by a woman with glowing hair. Princess Lyra looked like her. "My name is Commander Kale," the man said. "I lead the underground rebellion. We believe the royal court is corrupted. Varnak has controlled the king for years." Ethan blinked, trying to breathe. "I don't want any of this," he said. "I fix broken machines. I don't fix empires." Kale handed him a small device. "This is a key. It opens the vault of ancients. Inside you'll find proof of Varnak's betrayal. Get it, bring it to me, then choose your side." Before Ethan could reply, an alarm blared. Red lights flashed. "They found us," Kale said. "Go. Now." Ethan ran through the tunnels as shadows chased him. Metal guards with red eyes, weapons charged. He ducked, rolled, and used the glowing sword to block a plasma shot. He reached a lift and shot upward just in time. The doors opened into a garden. Standing there, waiting, was General Varnak. He smiled. "You've been busy, outsider." Guards surrounded them. Ethan raised his sword. "So what now, you kill me in front of the roses?" Varnak chuckled. "No, that would make you a martyr." He stepped closer. "You don't understand your role yet. Your blood, your presence, it gives me power. Marry the princess and I control the empire." "Not happening." Varnak's smile faded. "Then you are no longer a guest. You are a problem." Suddenly, Varnak raised his hand. Magic, old and dark, wrapped around Ethan like chains. "Your fire may be strong," he said coldly, "but it was lit by someone else." That night, Ethan woke up in a cell made of crystal. The walls hummed. His sword was gone. Across from him sat someone else. "Princess Lyra, you're not the only one he imprisoned," she whispered. Ethan stared at her. "Why are you here?" She leaned closer. "Because I helped you, and because I know what's coming next." "What?" Her eyes narrowed. "He plans to force the wedding. With or without your choice. Once the union is done, he takes command of the Starfleet, and then he starts the war." "War with who?" "With Earth." Far above the prison, on a lonely tower, General Varnak stood in the shadows, watching the stars. A soldier walked up. "The girl and the outsider are secured." Varnak nodded. "Good. Begin the preparations." "For what, my lord?" He turned slowly, a dark smile on his face. "For the wedding and the invasion." The wedding begins. The day of the wedding arrived, but it felt nothing like celebration. The skies over Zarian 5 were dark with storm clouds, unnatural ones, formed by energy weapons hidden behind the atmosphere. Drones flew in tight patterns, watching every street. The floating gardens were silent. The fountains had stopped. It wasn't a wedding. It was a war dressed in golden silk. Inside the royal palace, Ethan Cross stood before a tall mirror, dressed in ceremonial armor. White, silver, and gold. Symbols were etched across his chest. Strength, union, destiny. He didn't feel like any of those things. He felt trapped. The guards outside his chamber didn't speak. His sword was still gone. He hadn't seen Princess Lyra since the night they were locked up. Now, she too would be forced into a ceremony she didn't believe in. Ethan looked into his reflection. "This isn't right," he said softly. "I came here by accident. Now they want me to be their king?" He remembered Commander Kale's words. "Get to the vault. Expose the truth. Choose your side." But the vault was sealed, and the wedding was only minutes away. Then, a sound. Soft whisper. A panel in the wall slid open. It was Lyra. She wore a blood-red wedding dress embroidered with living crystals that shimmered like water. Her face was calm, but her eyes were burning. "We don't have much time," she said. Ethan stepped back. "How did you—" "The palace has forgotten something," she said. "It was built by my ancestors. There are ways through it only blood can unlock." She handed him a small sphere. A pulse of light beat inside it, like a heart. "What is this?" he asked. "The memory core," she said. "It holds the king's true orders. Proof that Varnak forged the prophecy. If we can get it to the central tower before the vows are spoken, the Empire's AI will override the wedding command." "What happens if we fail?" She looked him in the eye. "Then I become a queen without a soul, and you become a weapon in Varnak's hands." At that moment, in the Grand Hall of Unity, thousands of guests waited. Aliens from 100 systems filled the glowing seats. The king sat on his throne, silent. He looked tired, controlled. His crown pulsed with faint, red energy. Varnak's mind tech, and at the center of it all stood General Varnak himself. He wore ceremonial black armor with silver trim. Around his waist hung a ceremonial blade, identical to Ethan's missing sword. He stood near the altar, smiling like a man who had already won. "Let the wedding begin," he said. Back inside the hidden corridor, Ethan and Lyra sprinted through. The palace's secret paths, behind walls, beneath statues, under gardens. Guards walked past them, unaware. As they reached the lower chamber, alarms suddenly flared. "They found us," Ethan said. Then we moved faster. They reached the Vault of Ancients, two giant doors made of stone and star metal. Lyra placed her palm on the sensor. It glowed green. The doors opened. Inside was a throne, a hologram projector, and an ancient console. Ethan stepped up and inserted the memory core. It clicked. A beam of light shot upward, forming the face of the king, but younger, freer. The voice spoke. "If this message plays, it means I am no longer in control of my throne. General Varnak has twisted the prophecy. He seeks to claim the Starfleet through false union. The true heir is not bound by tradition, but by choice." Ethan's heart pounded. This could stop the wedding, or start a civil war, Lyra said. "But we don't have time to choose carefully." They grabbed the crystal data and ran. Back in the grand hall, Varnak raised his hand. "Bring forth the bride." Lyra was not there. The guests murmured. Varnak's eyes narrowed. "Find them." The doors slammed shut. Red shields lit up across every exit. "Lock the palace," he ordered. "No one leaves until the vows are sealed." Outside, the royal fleet shifted positions. Hundreds of warships turned silently, aimed not at enemies, but at Earth. Ethan and Lyra burst into the grand hall from a high balcony. Gasps echoed. Ethan held up the glowing memory crystal. "This wedding is a lie." The crystal projected the king's true message. The room went silent. The AI above the altar froze, its programming flickering. Varnak reacted instantly. He drew his blade, Ethan's own sword. He pointed it at Ethan. "You dare question the will of fire?" Ethan jumped from the balcony, grabbing a ceremonial spear. He landed hard. Sparks flew. The two men circled each other in front of the throne. Guests screamed and backed away. "I never wanted your crown," Ethan growled. "But I'll take back my future." Varnak struck first, fast, brutal. The blades clashed, energy sparked. Ethan ducked, blocked, rolled. Training from the trial of fire took over. He wasn't fighting for glory, he was fighting for truth, and he was done running. Lyra stepped beside her father, placing a hand on his crown. The red light faded. The king blinked, as if waking from a dream. "Lyra," he whispered. "Father, you're free." The king stood slowly. "Enough," he boomed. "End this." Varnak roared and rushed forward, but Ethan was ready. He twisted, dodged, and drove the spear into the energy node on Varnak's armor. The general screamed. Energy exploded. The blade shattered. Varnak collapsed. Silence. Moments later, the palace. Shields dropped. The guests stood stunned. The AI reset. The wedding was called off. The warships stood down. And the Empire had changed forever. Ethan sat alone in the gardens that night, the stars finally clear. Lyra joined him, still in her shattered wedding dress. "You saved the Empire," she said. "No," he replied. "We saved each other." She looked up at the stars. "This story isn't over, Ethan, not yet." And far, far above the clouds in deep space, a new ship watched quietly and sent a signal. Target confirmed, half-human heir identified. Begin Phase 2. Into the void, the palace on Zarion 5 still echoed with the chaos of the broken wedding, but far beyond its golden towers, in the cold silence of deep space, something much darker had awakened. A Shadow-class warship hovered in orbit, hidden behind the planet's twin moons. Its surface was invisible to most scanners covered in energy-eating armor. Inside the ship, strange creatures moved with purpose, machine minds and flesh bodies. At the center of the bridge stood a figure taller than any human, wrapped in armor, forged from meteor bone. Its eyes glowed with one purpose. "We have confirmed the heir," the creature growled. "Initiate extraction. The Starblood must not remain free." Back on Zarion 5, Ethan stared at the hologram projection of space. The star map blinked with red marks. "They're coming," he said, "but we don't know who." Lyra stood beside him, now wearing a general's uniform. She had taken command of the palace guard after her father stepped down. "Not yet," she replied, "but we know where they're going." She pointed to a dead moon on the map, Talon 9. "We intercepted a signal from the Dark Fleet. They've taken Commander Kyle and the rebel leaders. They're holding them on that moon." Ethan frowned. "Kyle saved my life. Then we go get him back." Talon 9 was no ordinary moon. It was a prison planet once used by ancient warlords, abandoned for centuries. No light, no laws, no hope. Ethan, Lyra, and a small team boarded a stealth cruiser. They flew through the void in silence. Stars blurred past like ghosts. No one spoke. The tension was thicker than gravity. As they neared the moon, Ethan stood at the window. He could feel something, some invisible pull, a pulse. Like a memory, he never lived. "This place is old," he whispered. "Older than the Empire." Lyra turned to him. "How do you know that?" Ethan touched his chest. "I don't know. I just do." They landed near an ancient landing site, covered in dust and vines of frozen metal. The sky above Talon 9 was black, even in the day. Clouds of iron choked the light. The ground felt hollow, like the moon itself was a shell. The team moved quietly, through broken gates and tunnels lit only by Ethan's sword. "We've got one shot," Lyra said. "Get the prisoners and get out before the Dark Fleet finds us." But it was already too late. Inside the central chamber, Commander Kyle was tied to a glowing chair. His body twitched with electric pulses. Around him stood the enemy. Soldiers of the Void Dominion, a rogue empire lost to time. Their leader stepped forward. It wasn't a creature, it was a machine, or once had been. "We are the Forgotten," it said in a voice like rust and thunder. "We do not serve kings. We serve the Star Blood. And you have stolen him." Kale coughed, blood on his lips. "You'll never control him." "We don't need to," the machine said. "We only need to awaken what's inside him." Ethan's team burst in. Blasters fired. The room exploded into chaos. Ethan fought without thinking. The sword moved like it knew what to do. Every block, every strike, it was perfect. But as he fought, he saw things in flashes, memories that weren't his. A war. A throne made of stars, a mother with tearful eyes. "You must stay hidden, Ethan. Your blood, it's too powerful." The enemy moved fast. One touched Lyra's arm, and in a second she screamed. Her eyes turned white. Ethan shouted and ran. To her. The sword pulsed. He placed his hand on her forehead. A wave of energy burst from his body. Every machine in the room shut down at once. Lights died. Silence. When Lyra woke up, she was changed. Her eyes were clearer. Her thoughts faster. "You healed me," she said. Ethan didn't answer. He was staring at his own hands. "I didn't just heal you. I connected to you. To your memory. To your soul." Kale, still weak, nodded. The prophecy said the heir would not lead armies, but awaken them. They had come to save one man. Instead, they had unlocked something far more dangerous. As they escaped the moon, the entire surface cracked. The prison was falling apart. Or maybe coming to life. An ancient signal broadcast from deep inside the core. It said one word: ascend. And in the darkness, something enormous shifted. Not a machine. Not a beast. A weapon from before history. Watching. Waiting. Back on the cruiser, Ethan sat in silence. The sword floated beside him, humming with a deeper energy now. Lyra stood nearby. "You're not just human anymore," she said. "Maybe I never was," he replied. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Whatever you are, you're not alone." He looked at her. "What if they're right? What if what's inside me is too dangerous?" She smiled sadly. "Then we fight it. Together." Outside the ship, stars shifted, and a black hole began to open in the far corner of space. The Void Dominion had awakened more than a bloodline. They had awakened a war that never ended. The prophecy fulfilled. The stars were dying. Across the edge of the galaxy, the ancient black hole spun like a wound in the sky, growing larger, feeding on light, bending time itself, and from it, they came. The Void Dominion had unleashed their final weapon, a living fleet, built from the remains of forgotten planets, and powered by stolen souls. Their flagship, the Null Crown, moved like a god through the stars. It did not travel through space, it rewrote it. At the center of it all stood their target, Ethan Cross, the half-human. The last Starblood, the heir not to a throne, but to a weapon born before time. On the defense moon orbiting Zarian 5, chaos ruled. The High Council had fallen. Half the Empire had gone silent. Shields were failing. Fleets were splintered. The ancient systems that once held peace were collapsing. And Ethan? He stood inside the Temple of the First Flame, the oldest structure in the known galaxy, now awakened from its 1,000-year sleep. Around him, golden fire danced in midair. Ancient runes spun in circles. Whispers filled the space. Echoes of his ancestors. Ghosts of kings. Visions of war. At the heart of the temple floated the core, a glowing heart of pure energy. Lyra stood beside him. Her uniform was torn. Blood stained her arm. But her spirit was unshaken. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. Ethan looked at the core. It pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "I was never meant to be a king," he said. "But maybe I was meant to end one." Suddenly, a deep vibration shook the temple. The sky cracked open. A black spear of light pierced the clouds. The Null Crown had arrived. A voice boomed across every screen, every mind. "Give us the heir, or watch your worlds burn." Ethan stepped forward and placed his hands on the core. Fire crawled up his arms. Symbols appeared on his skin. His eyes glowed, not red, not blue, but white-hot like a star being born. He screamed, but it wasn't pain. It was awakening. Memories of galaxies long gone. Battles between light and dark. A choice made by the first Flamekeeper, to hide the heir until he was needed again. And now, he was needed. Outside, 1,000 ships clashed in space. Zarian's rebel fleet, led by Commander Kyle, fought with everything they had. Plasma cannons roared. Fighters danced between explosions. Lyra commanded ground forces, giving orders through smoke and fire. But it wasn't enough. The Null Crown was moving toward the planet, preparing to consume it. Suddenly, a beam of energy shot from the temple. A figure rose from the light. Ethan. No longer just human. No longer just heir. He was the Flameborn, chosen by the stars, carrying the will of every world that once believed in peace. He flew into the sky like a comet, leaving a trail of golden light behind him. Inside the Null Crown, the Dominion waited. There, leader Lord Virex, a being made of void and bone, stepped forward. "You are late," he said. Ethan floated in silence, sword at his side. "You used my bloodline to feed your machine," Ethan said. "Now I'll shut it down," Virex hissed. "You were made to become us." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "No, I was made to stop you." And then, the final battle began. Ethan and Virex clashed across the ship's core. Energy cracked walls. Time bent. Ethan split into memories, seeing versions of himself that could have been a mechanic on Earth, a dead boy in the fire, a king with no love. But he chose this one. He chose now. Every strike of his sword echoed with the voices of 1,000 ancestors, and when Virex reached for his heart, Ethan grabbed his wrist and whispered, "This is for every world you broke." And then, he released the core. The explosion didn't destroy the ship. It freed it. The stolen souls screamed into the stars, set loose. The Null Crown shattered into golden dust. The black hole reversed, shrinking into nothing. The sky lit. up like a sunrise at the end of time. Later, the temple was quiet again. Ethan stood beneath its arch, weak but alive. The power had left his body but not his purpose. Lyra walked up beside him. "The council wants to name you High Protector," she said. He shook his head. "I'm no ruler." "What then?" He smiled. "A mechanic, a builder, someone who helps put things back together," she nodded. "You changed everything." He looked at the stars. "No. We did." Months later, peace had returned. New alliances were formed. Old wounds were healing. Ethan and Lyra stood at a small station orbiting Earth. No crowns, no armies, just a new beginning. As they looked down at the blue planet, Lyra asked, "Do you think they're ready to know the truth?" Ethan smiled. "We'll tell them a story about a wedding that became a war, and a guest who became something more." Behind them, a new star flickered in the sky, bright, endless, eternal. The flame had not died. It had just begun. The end.